Welcome to Channel 22, the Sheridan Channel. We have a special treat for you, From the Archives, a film from Sheridan's past, from a long line of independent filmmakers in Sheridan. Of course, everybody's familiar with Leon Schatz of Wayward Film Studios, one of several people making their living with a camera here in Sheridan. But Leon comes from a long line of independent filmmakers, and we are going to see on From the Archives a film by one of those, George Grunkmeyer. Tell us a little bit about the film, Leon.
This is a treasure of history right here in Sheridan, Wyoming. We get to see the town back in the day, but also we get to go up to the Cloud Peak Wilderness with George Grunkmeyer and take a look at what this area looked like back in the 40s or maybe even the 50s. And
there's another connection to Sheridan history because the sponsor of the film was?
This was actually brought and made possible by the Sheridan Brewing Company, which is pretty cool to look at that piece of the history and the fact that they sponsored this.
So the emphasis in the film is on the purity of the water, and to do that they take a look at the whole community and most especially the bighorns. We've got a couple of other treats in connection for you. First, on the break, Leon had a chance to interview Prudence Grunkmeyer, George's widow, about her life with George, and that'll be a special treat for us.
Yeah, it's a nice look at how she helped the business Vacationland Studios and that whole process of filmmaking back in the 50s.
And then the other treat is, we're not quite sure what year this film was made.
And that's why we're going to take it to you, the viewers.
We're going to have a contest. The first person to successfully identify the year this film was made, the decision as to the final winner will be made by the Chamber of Commerce. That person will win 50 Chamber of Commerce bucks. They can be spent at any participating Chamber of Commerce member in Sheridan County. Watch the film for important clues as to what year this was made. It'll be interesting to find out.
Let's give a hint. Pay attention when they show downtown Sheridan.
So with that, a stone's throw from heaven.
This is the story of water. Water, the most essential of all natural elements. Life itself depends upon it. Man or beast can live for days without food, but soon die without water. Cool, clear water, pure water, nature's most delightful gift. This is not a story about just ordinary water, but about a special kind of water, the clearest water you ever saw, as pure as you can find any place in America. Bighorn mountain water, water that finds its beginnings high up in the majestic Bighorns, farthest eastern chain of the Rockies. It is said that when Lavandrai, the first white man to see the Bighorns, first beheld the shimmering glory of these mountains under Wyoming's golden sunlight in 1742, he exclaimed, "The shining mountains. They shine by day, and they shine by night." And so this lofty range, topped by the 13,000-foot pinnacle of Cloud's Peak, has come to be known as the Shining Mountains. What a magnificent sight for the wandering explorers, then and now. From the deep gorges and canyons on the eastern slope of this range race tumultuous, noisy streams. The headwaters of the Powder, the Tongue, Bighorn, wending their tortuous way northward to join the mighty Yellowstone, the Missouri, and eventually the Gulf of Mexico. The Shining Mountains. birthplace of water. America's heritage, the Bighorns. But now follow us to the summits of these cloud-touching monuments, to where Bighorn water has its beginning. We motor from the flourishing and hospitable city of Sheridan, a prosperous, bustling community, modern but typically Western, where East meets the romantic and colorful West. Sheridan is the home of the famous Bot-Sot Stampede. The Indian word Bot-Sots means great day. Only a few miles from the city, we enter wilderness country, a spacious land of forests and canyons, rugged terrain where the wheels of civilization have never turned, where we must follow trails laid down by wild game and Indians many years ago. To travel these pioneer trails, we must revert to pioneer transportation, the old reliable horse. The cavy of mountain ponies is wrangled in. These husky cayuses are strong-legged, big-barreled, with lusty lung power for climbing steep grades at high altitudes. And yet they are gentle and wise in the ways of the trail. Travel by pack train is as old as the West itself, and packing is an art not learned from books. Everybody, including the dudes, wants to get in on the act and lend a hand. Yeah, Junior's having his troubles as a packer. Old Sitting Bull won't cooperate. Hey, look, Pop, he swells himself up. The panniards are examined. Loads must be equalized so as not to cripple the horses. The diamond hitch, the old-time trapper's and mountain man's way of lashing on a pack. Once secure and fast, it will not turn or slip. This requires know-how. It's not the job for a greenhorn. There she is, boy. All lashed hard and fast, and we're ready to go. Boots and saddles. The trail boss is a busy man. He has no time for horseplay. It's always an exciting moment when packstring first hits the trail. The train moves out and winds over green meadows, through spicy pine and cedar and quaking asp. The creak of leather and the horsey smell in the crisp Wyoming air, these quicken the pulse. The thrill of traveling real pioneer trails in the footsteps of Jim Bridger, John Coulter, and California Joe, where the hoofbeats of the Arapaho and the Shoshone war ponies echoed through the forests and canyons in days gone by. No bridges here. The sure-footed horses splash through crystal streams, carefully treading slippery, moss-covered stones under the swift-flowing waters. Speckled beauties, trout, dart with lightning speed. Wild game country is quickly reached. We startle a bull moose, monarch of the forest, feeding complacently on the tender aquatic plants that grow profusely along these marshy streams. Up and up the trail goes. The ponies dig in, always climbing, winding in and out between glacial boulders left here as millions of tons of ice pushed gradually downward. We enter the primitive area of the Bighorn National Forest, a land of enchantment, with regiments of pines marching up the mountainside. A land belonging to all the people, rich in timber, recreation, wildlife, and lush mountain meadow grazing land. Matchless fountainhead of pure, clear, running water, the life giver. The winding trail cuts through solid granite passes 1,000 years old. Mounting a high ridge, a panorama of enthralling beauty unfolds. Wide open spaces, a pathless wilderness, untouched by man's destructive hands. Locked in this mountain stronghold is Lake Geneva, surrounded by towering peaks on whose rugged sides sunlight and shadows play. It's only a short jaunt to Crystal Lake, a beautiful spot to spend the noon hour. This mountain ozone builds lusty appetites. The pause also provides relief to the anatomy unused to saddles. Again, the mountain explorers are on the trail. As we reach the higher altitudes, the streams grow smaller, but water, pure water, is everywhere in small ponds and lakes. By late afternoon, we come upon lovely Lake Solitude, scene of peace and quiet, where tranquility reigns supreme. Through rocky dells, the trail skirts the placid lake, while shadows play upon the rocky crags above. We cross the meadows at the upper end of the lake, heading toward the spot where our permanent camp will be set up. Silhouetted on the late afternoon sky, the tired horses look forward to a rest after the day's long climb. This explorer also appreciates a rest. Something seems to be bothering him. Something he sat on, no doubt. The evening campfire, pine nuts snapping and fragrant smoke mingling with the pine-laden air. A cup of steaming java, a tall tale with a cowboy. The troubles of ordinary life vanish with the campfire smoke. Night falls quickly in the mountains. The camp is overcast with the dark shadows of the pine trees. The yellow moon rises to flood the peaks with gold.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a
Pretty cool.
special treat. And how about downtown Sheridan,
Yeah,
huh?
and the rodeo and the bucking bronc.
You
This
betcha.
is they buck just the way they do now back then.
Now, did you see any clues as to what year this film was made?
Yeah, and if the cars don't give you any clue, you could potentially look at the style of cowboy boot. There are those that can really hone in on the year. So,
Email your answers to the email address shown. The final determination as to winner will be made by the Chamber of Commerce. Wins 50 Chamber of Commerce bucks that you can spend with any chamber member in Sheridan County. Before we go back to the film, we've got a special treat, an interview that you were able to conduct with Prudence Gruntmeyer of Vacationland Studios. Tell us a little bit about this interview.
well, we set it up for the Sheridan Filmmakers Festival, which we held at the Carriage House and the WYO Theater, and showcased Wyoming-based filmmakers. And so this was an opportunity for her to share what it was like working with her husband on these projects.
Well, they were certainly a very special couple, and very special certainly in the life of this community. So let's take a look at this very dear opportunity that Leon had to visit with Prudence Gruntmeyer.
Sounds like a plan.
My name is Prudence Gruntmeyer, and I'd like to welcome all of you to the Sheridan Film Festival. George was in the Navy and came home afterwards with the idea that he was going to have photography be part of his life. And so he and a friend thought it was so wonderful, the kind of vacations you could take in Sheridan and Wyoming, all of Wyoming and Montana, that they'd call it Vacation Land. And so that the name began, but the friend had to devote more of his life to his other occupation, and so it became the Grunkemeyer name until, well, we kept it until 1998 for the still work. But the motion picture work, when Bill took over, gradually became Grunko in order to differentiate the two, and because Bill's line was really wildlife and political things, totally different from the productions that George did. Some people came to Wyoming to be ranchers, but they had been in the film, the man had been in the film business his entire life. So he became a friend, of course, and he recommended a company in Chicago for George to have his work finished. And at that time, you couldn't get it done in, it was either California or Chicago. And so off George went to Colburn's in Chicago. They turned out to be absolutely wonderful friends. And he met a man named Henry Ushijima, who had been in the Secret Service during the war, and who had gone through, he had graduated in California as an accountant, but he had worked at one of the big studios the whole time, and he was fascinated by photography, so he ended up being an editor at the Colburn Lab. So all the Colburns and Henry Ushijima added a lot of quality to George's work because they criticized it and he listened. So every production he would get a little better, you see, because he had this good advice. Well, Sheridan is a pleasant place to live. And we, at that time, had a air service between Minneapolis and Los Angeles. And having that airplane available to go to Chicago and so on was a big help at that particular time. So it was like having these things in your back door. So you got the rural and vacation life in Wyoming, but you had to go elsewhere to get the finer touches to your productions. George loved nature and had spent his life before the war, and when people used little tiny cameras, he would film a hunting trip or something like that for himself and his friends. Then, because money was short and so on, he would add a few feet per year, so every year he'd re-edit and come up with a different production. I think the most important message of any of the films would be the enjoyable life you can have in Wyoming. The people who love nature love their films. And in George's case, the travel films encourage people to get out and look around Wyoming, to investigate the pleasures of being in Wyoming. There were lots of people doing them one way and another. One thing that George did and Bill followed was to get the very best equipment that was available at the time, as well as the supplies, the film, and so on, to always try to keep up with the latest that was being developed. You have to keep up with what's being invented. Well, I'm just thrilled to pieces that you're using this, because I do think that they are so different from what we do now. It changed. I'm surprised at how much it has changed since we all began this. It seemed to me I was a good secretary, because I was sort of in everything, but I couldn't do it all. I couldn't even do the basic photography. So I appreciated their efforts and got them all together, and they were loyal and helpful. That's the thing. Everybody wanted it to be good, and it was kind of a friendship thing. And people loyal to what they had done with George, because he had been a lot of fun to work with, and he'd been very inventive, and they just kept on inventing. Same with Bill. He just took off from where his dad had been and went on into various things. He went into political and all kinds of different assignments. The mining industry, and some of his very, very most extremely interesting shots are of big mine machinery working. It's gorgeous shots with the seed behind, you know, the lighting and all of that. So everything has its interesting aspect, I believe. He liked one that he did in Florida, and he liked especially one he did in Alaska, as well as all the ones he did in Wyoming. But he enjoyed the places that he got to film. He never was disappointed in his locations. If people just plain enjoyed them, they used them for programs in the days. For instance, Fishing Liquor Logic, Sam Mavrakis has used to teach fishing up until a few years ago. Now, that was one that, it was an interim between the time George Gruckemeyer died and Vacation Land became Grunko Films. But in that interim, following the line that George had started, they had that one. And then, so that impact lasted a long, long time. The people who saw those films at programs were complimentary, and of course would want to book the films. That, like, some of them were used 15 and 20 years. There was one done for Wyoming that won a first, it was won second in the United States that year for fishing films, or for outdoor films. And the only reason it lost was because it covered too many subject matters. And that one was used by the game and fish people for 20 years at schools and various program opportunities. Well, I'd have to kind of review the files to tell you the truth, but one film that Bill got to work on, just as he started, he worked under Jim Simon, who had been with Disney and who was now he was in charge of Wyoming Travel Commission photography, and they worked for NBC, I think it was, and the night that their NBC show was on, got 30% of the viewing audience, which was a big thing. It's in my clipping collection. Just be patient and reach out to find the customers to buy them, and to please the audience. You know, please yourself, you'll probably please the audience, maybe.
Wow, Leon, what a great opportunity to interview a great lady.
Yeah, I felt very honored and lucky to be able to conduct that interview with her.
Well, let's get back to A Stone's Throw from Heaven by George Grunkmeyer with the able assistance of his late wife, Prudence.
Early dawn brings out the trail boss, the first one of the party to roll out. The fire is soon burning and the old black coffee pot begins to simmer. There's nothing so invigorating as a dip in the icy lake. Builds up the appetite, he claims. And here comes another hardy mountaineer. Come on in, the water's fine. This is what is technically known as testing with the Tootsie. Yow, it burns. Invigorating my eye. I'll take mine in the bathtub. Breakfast, come and get it or I'll throw it away. That call rolls them out of the warm blankets. Flapjacks, bacon sizzling in the pan. Each one gets his chuck as he comes along. Those flapjacks are as heavy as saddle blankets, but they sure fill up a lot of empty space. Campfire smoke. We smell it, but gosh, who cares? It's breakfast time for the little chipmunk, too. No, two chipmunks. One chipmunk. Lots of chipmunks. Golly, this little guy certainly chews his oats. Look at this cowpoke dialing up. There's only one thing that would make a saddle stiff dude up on the trail: girls. While the gang is eating, the ponies are wrangled in for the day's ride from our base camp at Solitude. They're rested up, but they'd just as soon stay on the green grass a while. No corral is needed here. The lake and forest provide a natural enclosure. The trail boss is going to catch his cayuse, if he can. Hey, boss, give him a pancake. What goes on? Makeup, Bighorn Mountain style. In this rare atmosphere, the sun's rays are strong. Lips chap easily from the sharp, clear sunlight. So we all grease up. Hey, boss, what about me? What a pile of hardware. A lot of gadgets to snag a fish. Anglers trek into the high country of the Bighorn from all over the United States. Hey, look out! That cost me 25 smackers. The spinning rod and reel are becoming standard equipment in competition with the fly rod. Comes now the camera bug, with the same old argument. It never ends. Which sport requires the most skill? It always ends with no decision and with no one convinced. They're both good. There's plenty of opportunity here to try your skill with rod or lens. We leave the camp for our day's ride far up the mountainside. A lacy stream of water unwinds like a silver ribbon through the timber on its way for storage in the lake. Up and down, mostly up, the trail winds. Sometimes along the edge of a yawning canyon, sometimes across rowdy, galloping streams. From the top of the jagged, steep ridge, we look down upon a necklace of sapphire gems. Millions upon millions of gallons of pure water, stored here by nature for the benefit of animal and vegetable life, thousands of miles downstream. Lake's misty moon, Helen and Marion, mirror a summer sky. Again, it's mealtime, which is always welcome, for this air makes you eternally hungry. The trout fisherman gets busy. This place looks good. He casts a shining spinning lure curling out over the mirror surface. A quick, dark streak through the quiet water. A lightning strike. Reel them in. In this fisherman's paradise are found nearly every variety of trout. Rainbow, Mackinaw, brook, golden, and the husky brown. Half an hour's fishing reels in the limit. The angler's dream of a perfect day. And the camera bug, sneaking up to snap the big one that got away. There's no big fish tales to tell with the camera bug along. As we ride into the high country, where the air is cool and the sunlight strong, we find acres upon acres of wild flowers, displaying every color of the spectrum. Mountain laurel, forget-me-not, sunflower, shooting star, elephant head, buttercup, phlox, daisy, larkspur, white phlox, water lily, skunk cabbage, daisy. Even the trees grow flowers. This is the mistletoe. And, of course, the Indian paintbrush, Wyoming's state flower. This must be the place that poet Gray was dreaming of when he wrote that full many a flower is born to blush unseen and waste its sweetness upon the desert air. Above the timberline is a grazing band of elk, American wapiti, noblest of mountain wildlife. Summer here where the mountain breezes blow, where the grass is fresh and green and the hunter far away. Up and down our trail leads us through snow and ice drifts which were here when Columbus landed. Florence Lake, a glacial lake upon which the ice floats the year around, even in the hottest days of midsummer. In lakes such as Florence and Rainbow, far above the timberline, there is found excellent fishing. Brookies over a pound are common. They're fast and sassy too. And now we are in glacier country. In nearly every canyon are deep packs of eternal ice and snow, which have been building up and melting over hundreds of years. Those deep scars on the sides of granite mountains were carved by the claws of gigantic grizzly bears, according to Indian legend. Actually, they were caused by the abrasive action of the glacial ice, edging downward inch by inch through the edges. Some of these ice and snow drifts are 100 feet deep. Winter sports in summertime. Skiing in the August sun. No need for winter togs. You don't even need skis. This skier is cooling off the place where the saddle rubbed. We are now at the glacier's edge. Above us are thousands of cubic yards of hardened snow and ice. Wyoming's sun, brilliant in this rare atmosphere, eats away at this hardened snow and ice for a few hours each day. As the summer sun works away at high drifts, the beginnings of streams ooze forth in minute diamond-like globules, dripping into little pools at the edge of these great glaciers. Billions of these diminutive drops will one time course down the mountainside to make great streams of water. These glacial pools are constantly filling and overflowing into tiny rivulets, which bore their way through ice beds to join other rills to make a larger stream. The rapid flow of these small rivulets has cut through the rocks and ice until in some places these streams now churn and boil through underground channels of solid rock. These are Mother Nature's natural filter beds for water already pure. Myriads of these pygmy streams join to build a larger flow, which comes coursing down the mountainside in a bridal veil of swirling spray. In the valley, a few hundred feet below, these streams emerge, silver threads in a blanket of green. Across this delta, the Lilliputian glacial streams are funneled into a still larger watercourse. From every ravine and gap, crevice and crack, small cataracts of white water cascade, joining together to become a wild and tossing maelstrom, tempestuous and blustering. A thunderous torrent roaring down the mountainside. 1,000 feet below, a natural barrier checks and holds this great supply of water, storing needed moisture for the lands below. In this area, lakes are every place. Hundreds of reservoirs of pure, uncontaminated mountain water. Old Mother Nature wisely replenishes depleted stores of ice and snow. Rain clouds gather near the mountaintop. The moisture in these clouds may have been condensation picked up by evaporation over the far Pacific Ocean. Here it is again deposited as snow or rain, which in turn builds up glacial beds. The summer snowstorm is common at such high altitudes. They often reach blizzard proportions in the hottest summer months, although they seldom last long. A few minutes of snowfall turns the forest into a fairyland of white and green. The camp is buried beneath a white blanket. The air turns chill. The pony humps his back against the storm. But the clouds soon clear, and old Sol appears again to flood the land with welcome sunlight. A cup of steaming coffee brings warmth. And who gives a whoop about an hour or so of discomfort if it means a visit to a winter wonderland in July? The trees drip crystal jewels against the blue Wyoming sky. And here comes Mama Bruin and the two little boys. Ain't this white stuff wonderful? So cool and nice. Come on, let's wrestle. Stop it, she says. You don't have your snowsuits on. High up on the peaks, the snow still lies until the sun melts it again to build up depleted streams. Underneath the ice at the base of the glacier, the water whirls and fights its way through snowy tunnels to emerge and become a part of the wide, smooth-running river. Here's that fisherman again. Just can't pass a single river without hauling out that old limber rod to whip a fly. This white and rapid water is the playground for the big ones. And get a load of this one, a hefty brown. Anybody got a camera? Our trail takes us down this poetic river. This is no ordinary stream, but crystal clear, the best water in America. The wild geese, wisest of all game birds, summer's here where it's cool. There is nothing to fear. The river flows on, gathering momentum and power. To be harnessed by one of man's great engineering feats, which impounds billions of gallons of water to nourish thirsty lands below. To provide feed for cattle, and thus meat for America. To change the desert barrens into green-producing fields. To supply cities and towns far below with pure, sparkling drinking water. On our homeward trip down the rocky trail, we have time to meditate upon the glories of nature, all of which seem designed for man's use and benefit. The tired horses quicken. They know it will not be long before we'll be back in our base camp far below. The shadows have grown long as we again ride the trail along the shores of solitude. The sun is setting, tinting the mountaintops with red and gold. Twilight comes across the forests, and the shadows deepen. Darkness is settling down on the bighorns. The stars will soon be out. The outline of the pines frescoes the evening sky. The nighthawk soars above. And far down the valley, a coyote sings his evening song. The summer moon comes up to shed its golden glory over dark forests and white peaks. As the evening breezes whisper in the pines, they seem to tell again of the birth of bighorn mountain water in the shining mountains, just a stone's throw from heaven.
Wow, how much fun is that?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing and awesome that we actually have that footage.
A
that we're
great
able to
film
watch.
from the Channel 22, the Sheridan Channel archives. And we've got some other treats coming up, don't we?
Yeah, we've got a lot of other films that we're planning on showing over the next few months. We've got historical films from George's son, Bill Grunkemeyer, as well as we've got some that even older from like 1912, I believe, the Before the White Man Came, which was filmed by a Hollywood crew that came out, and it's a silent film filmed on location on the reservation to our north.
And another very special treat, another Sheridan iconic figure, Sam Mavrakis. We've got a film with Sam in it.
That's right.
Doing what he does best, enjoying the great outdoors here in Wyoming.
And don't forget the chamber box. Be sure to
get your entry in.
Entry for what year A Stone's Throw from Heaven was produced.
So looking forward to many more great films from the Channel 22 archives. I'm Dave Kinski.
And I'm Leon Schatz.
See you around the Sheridan archives.
And they've added the touch of a little Dutch spell.